Hello, my name is Emily Jude, and I'm going to be giving a brief presentation on reality therapy as an intervention system in education. This theory was originally developed by Dr. William Glasser in 1965, and over the past 40 years it's evolved from its original states to be a very widespread theory and application in education. There's been validated research studies, and the theory has been implemented and taught and practiced in the United States, Canada, Korea, Japan, Singapore, the UK, Norway, Israel, Ireland, Germany, Spain, Slovenia, Croatia, Italy, Colombia, Kuwait, Russia, Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong. So it's a very widespread theory that is implementable in almost any environment. The tenets of reality therapy are rooted that all human issues occur when one or more of 5 basic psychological needs are not met. These psychological needs being love and belonging, being the primary and most influential human need, the human need for power, the human need for freedom, the human need for fun, and the human need to meet our basic survival instincts. The second tenet of reality therapy is that an individual can only control his or her own behavior. We are not able to impose change on another individual. The success of reality therapy comes from the fact that individuals buy in and realize that they are in control of their own behavior and are the only ones that can affect positive change. Reality therapy is based on choice therapy, and it was originally developed and practiced in mental hospitals and in correctional institutions. But it is also proven effective in school settings, in regards to parenting, and in therapy and counseling situations. Some other basic information is that everything we do is a choice, and every behavior is our best attempt to get what we want to need to satisfy our basic needs, according to Dr. Glasser, who is, again, the originator of the theory. And we have a little more information on what those 5 needs are. The paramount need being love and belonging, which means that we all have an innate need to feel part of a group, to feel accepted by fellow students, our coworkers, other groups, being loved by our family and friends. This is a very fundamental and powerful need that drives a lot of our behaviors. Survival is another very primary instinct and need that we have as humans, and that, relates to having adequate access to food, shelter, clothing, and a feeling of stability. Another need is freedom. We have the need to feel independent, self-sufficient, and autonomous, meaning that we can take care of our own business, we can take care of our own needs, and we have the freedom to do so. Another human need for fun. This is pretty evident. We enjoy participating in events or activities that bring us pleasure or enjoyment. We also have a fundamental need to feel empowered. We need to feel that we are worthwhile, that we are a command of life's direction, that we are master of skills, we have a sense of achievement, and we like to feel successful at tasks. Now, these theories were originally come from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I think a lot of us are familiar with, but this sort of breaks it down into 5 basic needs that our behavior all stems from trying to meet one of these needs. And unfortunately, inappropriate behaviors come from ineffective methods of trying to get these needs met. So an application of reality theory, we've seen evidence, there's evidence that shows improvements when it's effectively implemented and teachers and counselors are effectively trained. There are improvements that are shown in overall classroom functioning, in classroom cooperation, and that there is a decrease in challenging behaviors, which is something that we are all striving for in our learning environments. There's also broader effects on the community as a whole. There's been research to show that reality therapy is effective with athletic coaching, that it's been implemented with juvenile offenders to help affect behavioral change in order for students and young people to come back out and to be successful individuals. And it's also fundamental, the premises help us bridge gaps between intolerance and ignorance through education and equality. And throughout this training and these types of counseling and these types of interventions, we can help individuals create more unity in their groups. Further applications of reality therapy include that the only person whose behavior you can control is your own. You can't control your mother, you can't control your brother, you can't control your boss, you can't control your coworkers, you can't control your fellow classmates. The only person that you have control over is yourself. So the only person's behavior that you can healthfully control is your own. The past is important, but in the terms of reality therapy, the focus is on the present problem behavior. We aren't necessarily looking for root causes as to how this behavior developed. That may come and may be a paramount stage for you to explore further at some point, but reality therapy is focused mainly in the present moment and how is what is being acted out, trying to meet a need ineffectively, and how can we alter that pattern. Another primary step is creating a positive environment and a positive relationship with your student. So the primary application of reality therapy, the only way that reality therapy is going to have any value or any positive benefit is if there is a positive environment established for the intervention and if there is a positive relationship built with the student that you're working with. So it really is fundamental and essential to build these relationships. And as we get along further, we'll talk about some of the specific steps that help us not only get to know our student, get to know our student's worldview, and get to know the problems in behavior, but we're also rapport building and relationship building during that whole entire process. So some steps to creating a positive environment. And it's interesting how these can be broken down into tonics and toxins. If we think about tonics being soothing and returning us to health, we see this list that helps create a positive environment. If we're trying to create a positive environment, we're going to try to avoid the toxins, the negativity, and the poisonous sort of behaviors and emotions and actions that are a detriment to creating a positive environment. So when we're thinking about creating a positive environment, we want to use attending behaviors. We want to use good eye contact, be interested, pay attention, don't go off into space. You want to suspend judgment. This is a very early time for you to build rapport with your student. Use humor when appropriate. Avoid sarcasm, but use humor. Establish boundaries. There still needs to be a clear delineation of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. It needs to be a professional relationship. When you're beginning your relationship with your student and you're trying to start working together, you need to be listening for metaphors and themes in ways that they view the world, in things that they say happen to them. Look for patterns, look for metaphors, look for themes. There need to be firm consequences, and this is sort of consistent with most behavioral approaches. Allow time for silence. We would also call this wait time. You know, when there's downtime, you need to allow students to process, allow students to kind of gather their thoughts. Be empathetic, and give the student choices in what to talk about, in what to explore. Connect with that student's feelings and that student's way of thinking. So when we're actually getting to know them, we need to keep these things in mind, and we also need to use affirming language. So that means I understand, I feel that you are, making a good choice. Using affirming language that's going to support the student to building a strong relationship. Things that we want to avoid in creating a positive learning environment are arguing with the student, accusing the student, blaming the student, criticizing the student, demeaning the student, colluding with excuses, finding fault, instilling fear, giving up on the relationship, or holding grudges. And these are all sort of toxic behaviors that will hinder the treatment. And a lot of times our students with behavioral issues quickly go to these toxins and view even some very typical behavior as accusatory or as criticizing or as demeaning. So we have to be very careful with our choice of language and our choice of tone because we want to avoid bringing toxins into the environment. The system for implementing reality therapy is broken down to the WDEP system. The W stands for we're going to discuss the students and the individual's wants, needs, and perceptions of life. So during this initial relationship building, that's really what we're doing. We're building relationships and we're discussing wants, needs, and perceptions. After we've established a good relationship and we have a strong foundation, then we're going to identify directions and goals. So we're going to sort of map out what's important to us and how we're going to get there. We're also going to encourage and teach and model self-evaluation. So this is how we can tell students and help students learn to do this on their own when they're finding themselves in problem situations. Okay, this is what I say I need. This is what I say I want. This is what I've done and it caused me a pitfall. How did those things not equate? And then we're going to, the P of the WEP system is planning for the future. The best way to move forward in a progressive fashion is to have a plan for the future. So in our W, again, this is part of the relationship building process. We kind of gotta give the students an idea of how to explore the picture album of their life. Like we tell them to look at their life and discuss what they consider as their quality world. What is important? What is paramount in their worldview? What do they have needs that are fulfilled or unfulfilled? And we sort of give them a locus of control. We put them in the driver's seat. We put them in the captainship. They are the captain of their boat. So this is sort of how we reframe this situation. And then during this stage of the implementation process, we also get a commitment from the student because we have to have buy-in from the student because the only person that could change the student's behavior is the student. So we help solidify a desire to find more effective behaviors. And some questions that we may use during this time is like, who are the most important people in your life? What are your most deeply held values? If you become the person you would ideally like to be, what traits or characteristics would you have? What's an accomplishment you're really proud of? If you could have the perfect job, what would that be? If you were independently wealthy, what would you do with your time? Things like that. What does it mean to be a good friend? These are all sort of exploratory questions that help us build a relationship and pick out a direction. The next step is that we're going to work on the direction. We're going to explore our total behavior, which is the combination of acting, thinking, feeling, and our physical symptoms. We help students examine the direction of their lives and how the specifics of how they spend their time. So we're going to discuss core beliefs, and we're going to talk about effective and ineffective self-talk, that voice in our head that tells us, what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? We're going to explore the twofold purpose of behavior to impact the outer world and to communicate a message of it. Some questions that you're going to be asking in this time: what are you currently doing in your life? So the next step is the evaluation, which is a cornerstone of the process, and is actually the practical implementation. We're going to help the student evaluate his or her own behavioral direction. We're going to help him or her identify specific behaviors and connections to wants and needs. And we're going to follow up and continue to consult and continue to educate on how a behavior is occurring, what need are you trying to meet, how does that affect your goal, and henceforth. So what are you going through? What is your problem-solving process to help the student take ownership of his or her own behavior and the ability to self-evaluate that behavior independently? It's focused on self-reflection, introspection, examining pitfalls, stumbling blocks, and determining new pathways to improved relationships. The last step is to make plans. We're going to help students make solid plans, solid goals that are simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. It's important to keep in mind that these steps in this implementation process are cyclical. They go back and forth. So we may be doing a little staggering. We may be doing a little circling around. But some basic summary of reality theory is that it's present-focused, relationship-based theory that believes everyone wants to be happy. We want to have satisfying relationships to make good choices. The only person an individual can control is himself. All actions are chosen in an attempt to satisfy a basic need. We often choose harmful habits in an attempt to control others to satisfy our basic needs, and that ultimately leads to immediate relationship breakdown. So we're consciously choosing to create and use caring habits over harmful ones that can satisfy basic needs in order to build stronger relationships and promote greater individual happiness. There's also a brief summary of the 7 caring habits as opposed to the 7 deadly habits. These are things that we want to replace our deadly habits with our caring habits. And we can look at this list and hopefully start practically implementing these steps in order to help our students overcome troublesome behavior when trying to meet their basic needs. Thank you very much and have a good day.